What if our history holds the key to a battle that was never fought, a war prophesied to end all wars? Deep within the caves of Qumran, nestled near the shores of the Dead Sea, a treasure trove of ancient secrets lay hidden for 2,000 years. In 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd stumbled upon clay jars containing scrolls, revealing the thoughts and beliefs of a mysterious ancient community. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls, a library frozen in time. And among them was a text unlike any other, a detailed battle plan for a conflict that would span generations. It is known simply as the War Scroll. This wasn't just a record of past conflicts or a king's boastful conquests. It was something far more profound. The War Scroll, or the War of the Sons of Light against the Sons of Darkness, laid out a 40-year war, a final apocalyptic struggle between good and evil. It reads like a military manual from a different dimension, a blueprint for a spiritual collision. The authors believed a great war was coming, a confrontation so epic it would cleanse the world and usher in an age of divine purity. This scroll was their guide, their hope, and their ultimate prophecy. So who were these champions of righteousness, the self-proclaimed Sons of Light? The evidence points to a devout and secluded Jewish sect, likely the Essenes, who had retreated into the desert wilderness. They sought to live a life of absolute purity, far from what they saw as the corruption of the cities and the temple in Jerusalem. They followed a strict code of conduct, sharing their possessions and dedicating their lives to study, prayer, and ritual purification. Their world was one of order, discipline, and unwavering devotion to God. For the Sons of Light, the world was a very clear place, divided sharply between good and evil, purity and corruption. They believed they had been chosen by God to uphold his sacred laws in an age of darkness and decay. Their community was a fortress of faith, an island of holiness in a sea of moral compromise. They referred to themselves as the community of the covenant, bound by a sacred promise to live righteously until the final day of judgment. Their leader was a mysterious figure known only as the Teacher of Righteousness. This guide, they believed, was sent to them by God to correctly interpret the Holy Scriptures and lead them on the true path. The very structure of their community mirrored a military camp. They were organized into units with priests and Levites holding key roles. Their daily lives were filled with discipline that would serve them well on the battlefield they so vividly imagined. The War Scroll was the culmination of their entire belief system, a practical guide for transforming their spiritual purity into a physical force capable of cleansing the world and restoring divine order. On the other side of this cosmic battlefield stood the Sons of Darkness. Who were these figures of evil in the eyes of the Qumran community? The War Scroll describes them not as mythical demons, but as very real human enemies. This coalition of darkness included the Kittim, a name most scholars believe referred to the Romans, the mighty empire whose legions occupied their land. The Romans, with their foreign gods and brutal military power, represented the ultimate force of worldly corruption and oppression, a direct challenge to the sovereignty of God. But the Sons of Darkness were not just foreign invaders. The scroll also names other enemies closer to home. It speaks of the violators of the covenant, which likely meant other Jewish groups who did not share their strict interpretation of the law. This included the established priesthood in Jerusalem, whom the Essenes saw as corrupt and illegitimate. In their view, anyone who did not follow their path of absolute purity was by definition an agent of darkness. Their war was to be fought not just against outsiders, but against their own people who had strayed. The beliefs of the Sons of Darkness, from the perspective of the Sons of Light, were rooted in materialism, power, and idolatry. They were the forces of chaos, the people who put the laws of man and the might of empires above the laws of God. They represented a world entangled in sin, a world that needed to be swept away. The War Scroll lists these nations: Edom, Moab, Ammon, and the Philistines, ancient enemies of Israel, alongside the Kittim, creating a grand alliance of all the forces that stood against their vision of a pure, holy nation. The War Scroll does not just speak of war, it choreographs it. The final conflict is laid out as a meticulously planned 40-year campaign. The scroll details everything, from the age and physical fitness of the soldiers to the precise dimensions of their weapons. The army of the Sons of Light was to be a perfect reflection of divine order. Soldiers would be conscripted between the ages of 30 and 50, with priests and Levites serving in non-combat but crucial roles. This was not to be a chaotic brawl, but a wholly ritualized act of purification. The battle itself was envisioned as a series of engagements, with periods of rest on the sabbatical years, in keeping with religious law. The scroll describes the banners that would fly over each unit, inscribed with phrases like, "The wrath of God in fury against Belial and all the men of his lot." Trumpets, each with a specific name and purpose, would sound the calls for assembly, ambush, pursuit, and retreat. Every movement on the battlefield was to be directed by the priests, turning the clash of armies into a form of worship, a violent prayer enacted on a global scale. Central to this vision was the belief that the Sons of Light would not fight alone. The scroll speaks of heavenly reinforcements, a celestial army of angels led by the Archangel Michael fighting alongside them. This divine intervention was the key to their victory. They saw themselves as the earthly contingent of a much larger cosmic force. Their purity and discipline were what made them worthy of such powerful allies. The war was ultimately God's, and they were merely his chosen instruments on earth, destined to triumph over the numerically superior forces of darkness. Ultimately, the prophecy predicted a complete and total victory. After 4 decades of struggle, the Sons of Darkness and their demonic leader Belial would be utterly destroyed. The world would be cleansed of all evil and impurity. A new age would dawn, an era of peace and righteousness under the rule of God, with the Sons of Light as the faithful stewards of a purified earth. This wasn't just a plan for a military victory, it was a blueprint for the end of history as they knew it and the beginning of a perfect, eternal kingdom. So why is this incredible document not a part of the Bible? Why was the War Scroll, along with many other texts from the Qumran caves, rejected by mainstream Judaism and early Christianity? The primary reason is its specificity and its exclusive nature. The canonical scriptures, those that made it into the Bible, tend to speak in broader, more universal terms. The War Scroll, however, was written by and for a very specific community, the Essenes, with a very specific agenda. Its message was sectarian, focused on the righteousness of one small group against all others. This kind of text simply did not fit with the more inclusive messages that came to define both Rabbinic Judaism and Christianity. While both traditions speak of a final struggle between good and evil, they frame it in more spiritual or metaphorical terms. The War Scroll's literal, militaristic vision of a physical war fought with spears and swords was too narrow, too rooted in the politics of its time. Its condemnation of other Jewish groups as Sons of Darkness was a barrier to the unity that later religious leaders sought to build. It was, in essence, a product of its isolated and zealous environment. What makes the War Scroll so important, however, is precisely what made it an outcast. It provides an unfiltered look into the passionate and even extreme beliefs that flourished during a turbulent period of history. It shows us that there wasn't just one way of thinking about God, faith, and the future. The scroll is a powerful reminder of how political and religious tensions can merge, creating a worldview where armed conflict is seen as a sacred duty. It reveals a side of ancient faith that is less about peace and forgiveness and more about zeal, purity, and righteous battle. Today, the War Scroll leaves us with a profound and unsettling legacy. It stands as a testament to the power of belief to shape reality, for better or for worse. It challenges us to look at the stories we tell ourselves about good and evil and how easily we can cast those who are different from us as the enemy. The great war of the scroll was never fought, the prophecy never came to pass, but the human tendency to divide the world into light and darkness remains. The War Scroll is a secret that has been exposed, a whisper from the past, warning us of the dangers of certainty and the awesome power of a story.